All right, and welcome everyone to the Ginette Biro podcast. Welcome to the Halloween special. It is Halloween week. As you can tell, for those of you that are watching the video, I have my skeleton sweatshirt on. I'm rocking it. I love this time of year. I love Halloween. And, for as much as I grew up being afraid of the spirit world because things were happening, I always felt like Halloween gave me an opportunity to explore it safely. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in a minute. But first, I want to go into some of the history of Halloween. Where did it come from? Some of you might know, some of you might have many different stories, but in general, Halloween is said to have come from the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. Now, some people will call it Samhain. Apparently, that is the worst way you could say it. The closest we can get to is Samhain, but apparently even that is quite far from the actual pronunciation. But what it was is Celtic people, Druids, pagans would light bonfires, wear costumes to ward off ghosts. They would take the energy of that night and ward off darkness, demons, ghouls, anything negative, because November 1st was designated as All Saints' Day. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III decided that All Saints' Day would be that day. And so they incorporated some of the traditions from Samhain. And then the evening before All Saints' Day became All Hallows' Eve, which then later became Halloween. So it kind of morphed and grew as, time went on. And now you look at what Halloween has evolved into, and we dress in costumes, we go trick-or-treating, we have parties, we decorate the houses in spider webs, and we have a giant butler outside, this dead butler that's there to scare you, pumpkins, graveyards, all of that kind of stuff. But what Halloween is really doing is it's giving us an opportunity to explore death, dying, decay, being a different person, being a different embodiment for a night. It allows us that opportunity. And it's really quite interesting because when we see it that way, we can actually see the value of Halloween. We get an opportunity to safely, in a safe way, dress up as a corpse, dress up as something that is dying, or a vampire who is immortal, or we get to kind of dive into the darker aspects of myth, of histories, fantasy, all of that kind of stuff. We get an opportunity to kind of safely dive in. It's accepted. It's an accepted practice because, to walk around all day long dressed as a zombie every day, might not be received so well. But there's one night a year where you can totally do that and see yourself as that. You can look at the mirror and see what you may look like if you were decaying. Like, yes, it's makeup, but again, it's this opportunity to dive in to the dark side of it, the death side, the decay, the letting go, the dying, that darkness is what I keep hearing. And it's really interesting too, because what started as this celebration of, with the different pagan rituals and Druid rituals and stuff like that, of, celebrating the eve before the light of All Saints' Day, and, the thinning of the veil, and these magical practices of communicating with the dead and all of that stuff. It's become this commercialized experience for many people right now. But what if we allowed the idea of Halloween to open up these opportunities for conversation? What if we really dove into this embodiment and really started exploring death for us? And what I mean by that is this conversation that I had with my kids, because we have this graveyard that we drive by on our way to school every day. And we've talked about the graveyard, and we've talked a lot about death and dying, obviously, in my household, and spirits, and where spirits go, and that spirits don't stay laying in the ground like a body does if it's buried. And we've talked about how cemeteries back in the day used to be often a bright, beautiful place. They were known in history to be quite lively. I'm talking about early centuries. They were quite lively. They were celebrated. There are still some cultures that do celebrate in graveyards, parties, food, gatherings, anniversaries. There's even myths of farmers used to graze their cattle in cemeteries because they believed that grass-fed cows from cemeteries produce sweeter milk. Same with mini markets would often be held in the open spaces of graveyards because they figured the energy of the dead would bring them good luck in selling their goods and wares and all of that. So we talked about all that kind of stuff. And then we went to a graveyard and, I taught the kids about how to respectfully walk through graves and, which way they're usually situated and what the numbers on them mean and how families are often buried together and how some plots have a name that's completed with the dates on both sides, and the ones that aren't completed, it's, a spouse that maybe hasn't crossed yet, all that kind of stuff. We talked about it, which then led to conversations about why we decorate our houses with scary stuff and graveyards and all of this. And it was bridging this gap, and it was opening further this ability to talk about and explore death, dying, and decay. So then we got into the conversation of bodies and how they decompose and what happens to the bodies after. And I had always said to my kids that, like, when I pass, doesn't really matter what you do with my body. You can, send it to science, do this or this or this. But just don't put me in the ground for nothing. And so we would have this joke that, my daughter's like, I'm going to drop you from a helicopter into the ocean. And my son's like, well, I'm actually going to just throw you on a mountaintop, and it became this funny conversation, but it allowed us to start talking about death in a really easy way. And so then we started talking about how things have changed from how long time ago in history people were, they would be cremated, some were mummified, some were kept in these crypts and taken out every year to be celebrated. There are certain cultures that they still do that today. They put them in a crypt, they take them out at Halloween, or not at Halloween, on the anniversary of that person's passing. They open up the caskets, and the bodies have been mummified, but they're still dressed in their clothes. And they literally pick up the bodies, they stand up beside them, they put money in the hands of the corpse and even cigarettes in their mouths, and they take pictures with them. And I've seen this. And so again, what is normal for us might be totally weird to another culture, yet what is normal to another culture might be totally weird to us, right? Like most of us probably can't imagine pulling out our deceased loved ones from a coffin and standing them up and, putting cigarettes in their mouths. But this is opening up our experience with death and dying. This is making it unlimited. This is really allowing to kind of shake some of the pressures of how it should be and really opening up the playing field for what it can be. And that conversation that I'm really trying to get to with all of what I'm saying is, have you had the conversation with your loved ones, no matter your age, what you would want done with your remains? What you would want, what seems of value to you? Because one of the most common questions I have from people, after their loved ones pass is, did I do the right thing? Did I bury them in the right spot? Do I need to do this. I need to do that. I have to do this. I have to do that. If you can clearly lay that out before you go, that'll make it so much easier on your family. And I realized this when I was talking to my kids, because like I said, I was like, oh, you know what? It doesn't really matter what you do with me. I don't really need a place to go because my spirit is going to be the one that's set free. Just don't leave me in a box. But when we were driving by the cemetery again, they said, and this is from a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, they said, Mom, can we, if we cremate you, can we at least put part of you in a cemetery? Because then we would have somewhere to go. And it would feel like we could talk to you there. And I thought, well, now, isn't that interesting? And I say this because, this comes up in conversations a lot with clients, is the spirit is like, do whatever feels right for you. What do you need? But have you had that conversation in life with people around you? What do they need? Because you know what? I would have left it in my will to just, cremate me or put me in a tree pod and move on. But for my kids, they said it would be nice to have something to look at, like a plaque or a something. And I was like, well, that's actually what matters. It doesn't really matter what I want unless I'm set on something, but that would give them healing. That would give them something to feel good about, or a place to connect with me, even though spirit can connect in all ways, but it helps them. And so that's why I'm saying this is like, if you haven't already, be willing to have this conversation with your family members while you're still alive of things you may want to try, because you know what, you may want to donate your body to Body Worlds. Do you guys remember that? What's the word? I'm trying to think of the right word, but you know, Body Worlds was this display. It was a scientific / art display of people that donated their bodies, and they were plasticized and moved into all these different positions. So you could see musculature, you could see bones, you could see eyes, you could see organs, you could see fatty tissue, you could see circulatory systems and nervous systems of real bodies, but turned into plastic. And they'd done this with horses, and they've done this with chickens and all this. Now, to some people, that would be horrible and gruesome. But to other people, that might be something that they feel is worthwhile. I mean, honestly, I could even see that. That would be worthwhile. If I've grown this body and made this body, why not allow this body to be used to teach other people? Right? I could see that. But that would be a hard one to decide as a family if it's not been said. I mean, I wouldn't think if my husband passed, like, oh, I'll just send him off to Body Worlds. That would be a hard decision for me to choose. That would be something I could follow through on if it was his wishes. But sometimes we don't have these conversations. Right? Because there's so many things, as I was looking into it too. I mean, I'm using Body Worlds as an example, but you could give your body to science. You could, and I've pondered that too, like, oh, do I maybe give my brain, if I pass, do I give my brain to scientists to see, do they notice anything different in my brain because I'm a medium? Do I have an enlarged pineal gland like I've seen in research? You know, those kinds of things. But you can also, you know, people bury themselves in tree pods to grow a tree. People will get their ashes and put their ashes in tattoos. There's people that get tattoos with the ashes of a loved one into their skin, so they're a part of them. There's also another one, and I thought this was pretty interesting too, is people will have, they'll be cremated and then put into fireworks. How amazing is that? Could you imagine being put into fireworks? What a show that would be. So this conversation will make it easier on your family. I mean, for the most part, there's some families where that conversation is really hard and it just can't happen. And that's fair. But I know for myself with my kids, it made for really neat opening conversations about what can be done with the body, about things not being taboo, about us being able to talk about death, dying, decay, as much as we would talk about the right foods to eat, as much as we would talk about our bodies and, you know, talking to kids about private parts, and as much as we would talk about kindness, and as much as we would talk about like all these big things, death and dying and what happens after does not need to stay in taboo. The more we're willing to talk about it, the more it becomes a bit of an easier thing to move through. And so that's why I really wanted to bring this up, is because we get to really choose how we shift the narrative going forward. And these are just ideas. Again, this topic came from conversations I'm still having with my family right now. And ones that I didn't realize maybe needed to change a bit, because what I thought was good and I had it all figured out for me actually wouldn't benefit my kids at this point the way that would help them the most. And I didn't know that until they brought it up. And they're 7 and 9. So, I mean, it would be really curious to see. And I also have to say that having these conversations also made Halloween really interesting this year, because again, in my family, like with my kids and my husband, we talk about death, we talk about dying, we talk about spirits, we talk about this kind of stuff quite regularly. So we're quite comfortable with it. But when we walked into the Halloween store and I said to my daughter, okay, what do you want to be for Halloween this year? And like last year, she was Natiri. Before that, she was Elsa for 2 years, like all these Disney movie type things. And this year she's like, Mom, I just want to be dead. And I was like, what? Wait, what? What are you talking about? And she said, no, Mom, for Halloween, I just want to explore being dead. I'll be whatever costume, but like something dead. Like, can we paint my face? And can we this and this and this and this? And I was like, yeah, we can do that. We can explore that. I'm like, maybe I'll do that with you. Maybe I'll be some kind of like dead vampire skeleton lady witch thing. And we laughed. And she's like, yeah, but not like really dead, Mom, because I'm not ready for you to die or for me to die. And I said, no, me neither. But we can explore it on Halloween. And she's like, okay, great. And so I say this because it's just, again, an opportunity to explore all aspects of life, to make things that seem uncomfortable have a space to be talked about. We don't have to just explore death, dying, and decay on Halloween or when someone dies. We can explore it before, so that when it does happen and it isn't just Halloween, we have some tools and some understandings and some framework to work with it. So I wanted to leave that with you guys. I know it's a little bit of a expansive topic in one way. So I recognize if this triggered anybody, I feel you and I send you so much love. And yeah, anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. So happy Halloween week. I hope you guys all have a wonderful time trick-or-treating, whatever party or events you go to, costumes, all that. I hope you guys dress up and just live it up for a night. You might as well. Now, for everything else, check out avalonspirit.com. And also you can definitely check out Spirit Coffee Talk. And yeah, that's about all I got for you guys. So I'll see you next week.